do in the fall, now that the weather's starting to cool down. Before we jump in for our lesson today, I do have a little shout out. We have some cool artwork to share with you guys. So we have from Harper, it looks like, some of our guests, and Braxton. We had a zoo snooze recently where you get to sleep over at the zoo overnight and hang out with some of our animals. And it looks like Braxton and Harper did some really nice artwork, and they wanted to share it with our animals at the zoo. And so we wanted to shout out to them and thank them for coming out and joining us at the zoo. If you guys have any artwork, in the spring when we did Zoo School, we had lots of really great submissions. If you guys are watching our episodes and you come up with any cool artwork or projects you'd like to share, you can send them to us at education@elmwoodparkzoo.org. We'd love to share them on the episode, okay? Now, as always, as we're going through and learning today, if you have questions, anything you'd like to know, please put them down in the comments, and I can either answer them at the end of this episode or I'll hop back online and answer them later today, okay? So we're going to jump into the lesson. Today we're focused on Monarch Butterflies. So 2 days ago, we looked at a backyard habitat animal. We learned a little bit about skunks. This species of insect is another one you'll find in your backyard. And if you're not familiar with the monarch, you've probably at least seen their very signature color and pattern before. So that beautiful orange with the black and the white spots is kind of a very often used image for insects and for conservation even. And that's because the monarch butterfly is a pretty special species. They go through the largest migration of any type of insect found on our earth. So these butterflies that you guys see here, they are going to be very shortly embarking on a journey all the way to Mexico. So when they come out of their chrysalis, and we'll talk about what a chrysalis is and how they get to this point, those little tiny wings that you're looking at, those are going to carry them over 2,000 miles, which is incredibly impressive. Now, before we get into that fully and what we're going to do with those monarchs today, we're going to take a look at butterfly and moth life cycles very quickly here. So I have an example of each. So this is an atlas moth, and this is a morpho butterfly. So butterflies and moths belong to the same group of insects. They do have wings. They're going to have antennae, a main body there made up of a head, thorax, and abdomen. Now there are some differences between the two. Moths typically have very fuzzy antennae, and they are often active at nighttime. Butterflies usually are going to have more of those club-like antennae and are more active during the daytime, but just like anything in nature, there are exceptions to the rule. So moths and butterflies, for the most part, have the same types of structures, and they have a very similar life cycle. So for monarchs, when we're talking about our monarch butterflies, they lay an egg, and now this is a blown up picture. Their eggs are not this big. Their eggs are usually about the size of a tiny pinprick, and they're gonna lay those eggs on the back of a milkweed leaf. So I actually have some milkweed here and some caterpillar friends who are hanging out. So milkweed is often found growing along edges of roads, in your gardens, along farm fields. It gets the bad reputation by giving it the name weed, but it's actually a very important food source for our monarchs. It's one of the only things that they eat. So a butterfly or a moth will lay an egg on what's called a host plant. In this case, the host plant is going to be the milkweed plant for the monarch. And that egg is going to be on there for a few days before it hatches. Once it hatches, in the case of our monarchs, the caterpillar is extremely tiny. What you are looking at today are the later stages of a caterpillar. When they first hatch out of that egg, they're very, very small, and they go through about 5 different, what we call instars, or stages. So they shed their skin and grow about 5 times. And during that time, when they're eating their food and they're shedding their skin and they're growing, they're going to grow over 2,000 times their body mass. That's insane. That's how much food they have to consume and energy they need to store up, because after the caterpillar stage, whether you're a butterfly or a moth, after you spend most of your time eating and you grow and grow and grow, you're going to enter the pupa stage. Now the pupa stage for a monarch is going to be a chrysalis. And I actually have an example of a chrysalis here for you guys to take a look at. So monarchs produce this beautiful bright green chrysalis with little gold speckles and black. And what they'll do is they'll actually crawl to the top of either a plant or the enclosure they're in, and they will form a little web on top and attach themselves to this leaf or the top of the enclosure, wherever it is they are, and then their body basically splits open, their old skin and their head pop off, and this pupa, this case, emerges from that. And they will stay in a chrysalis form for around 10 to 14 days. And inside of that chrysalis, the caterpillar is basically all curled up. He's going to sleep, and his body will start to liquefy, basically turn into jelly. And then after 10 to 14 days, the wings form, the main parts of the butterfly body form, and that's when they emerge as an adult. Now, the main difference for butterflies and moths is that moths usually form what we call cocoons. So cocoons are going to be a little bit more like a silky case. So this is an example of a cocoon. It's kind of got, almost looks like a little spider web. It's very, very silky, whereas most caterpillars from butterflies are going to make a harder chrysalis. So cocoons for moths, chrysalis for butterflies. So monarch caterpillars are going to look just like these guys. They have that white and yellow and black striping, and this coloration is often seen in the wild as a warning. We talked about this a little bit on Tuesday with Pesto the skunk. Many animals that have bright colors or bright patterns are using those patterns to communicate and to warn other animals to stay away. In the case of the monarch butterfly, the caterpillars and the adults have these bright colors to tell other animals that they are toxic. So the plant, the milkweed plant, gets its name because it does produce a milky kind of fluid on the inside, and it is toxic itself. Many things can't eat it, but the really awesome thing is that caterpillars from the monarch butterfly have adapted over thousands of years to be able to eat milkweed, and they actually take on that toxin themselves from eating the plant. So that bright white, yellow, and black, and in the case of the adult, the bright orange and white and black, those colors tell animals, hey, stay away. If you eat me, you're going to end up with a really sick stomach. It's not going to be good for you. So animals learn pretty quickly not to mess with monarchs. So that's why they're so brightly colored. They are not trying to blend in. They are trying to stand out so that other animals know to stay away. We have quite a friendly little caterpillar guy right there. So they eat the milkweed. They grow about 2,000 times their body mass. Once they've been in that chrysalis or that cocoon in case of a moth for about 2 weeks, they will emerge as an adult. And this process is called metamorphosis. We talked about this a little bit with our frogs last week. Now, adult butterflies, in the case of the monarch, have this beautiful orange, black, and white color. And they have wings. And those wings are actually covered in tiny scales. So we're going to try to give you guys a cool look at the scales here with our microscope. So this is actually, we have some butterfly wings underneath the microscope. We'll see if we can get it in view. So they actually are covered with tons of tiny, tiny scales. And if we can't make it work, that's okay. There's often a myth that we hear that if you touch a butterfly's wings, it will die or it will fall off or things like that. Or if you've ever seen the dust, the residue that's left on your fingers after you touch a butterfly's wings, those are the scales. So those scales are made of material very similar to what the rest of their exoskeleton is made of. And that's what helps those butterflies to fly. So our microscope's not working out too well, but what we can do is get nice and close to our butterfly wings. So this is a butterfly that's no longer alive. Unfortunately, even if they're very healthy and well cared for, butterflies usually don't live beyond about 2 to 3 weeks. Now, the really cool thing with monarchs, especially this time of year, is that they will live for several months in the case of the fall monarchs. And that's because they have to do a really big journey. So these tiny wings covered in all those little scales are going to carry monarch butterflies several thousand miles. And the butterflies that live here in Pennsylvania are going to travel to Mexico. So I actually have a map for you guys to look at here. So in Pennsylvania, we're located right around in here. Our monarchs in the fall, starting around September, are going to travel all the way down through the southern United States to a wintering spot in Mexico, in the mountains of Mexico. So the monarchs that are emerging right now, including the ones we have here, will live for several months. Normally, in the summertime, they only live a few weeks, and they go through several life cycles living in their summertime area. So this time of year, our adult monarchs will travel to Mexico, they'll overwinter, and then they'll start the migration back in the spring, but they won't make it back to Pennsylvania. They'll start that migration, and along the way, they'll lay eggs, they'll die. Their young will raise up and go through metamorphosis, make a little bit further of journey, lay eggs and die, and then their next generation, around the third generation, will make it back to Pennsylvania. So it's an incredible, very, very detailed process that takes a lot of energy and a lot of things to go right along the way. So unfortunately, monarch butterflies are endangered, and they're at threat of disappearing from our continent, mostly because of habitat loss. I mentioned earlier that monarchs like to eat milkweed. Milkweed, as the name suggests, is not very appreciated by most people. We rip it out of our gardens. We oftentimes spray for it to try to get it out of our lawns. Farmers will cut it down. So if an animal doesn't have a food source, they often can't survive. In the case of a monarch butterfly, they only lay their eggs on different types of milkweed. So if there aren't milkweed plants available, their caterpillars will not survive. They won't lay eggs. So unfortunately, their habitat here in the United States, in Pennsylvania, along that migration route is at risk. It's also at risk in Mexico, where they spend the winter. Unfortunately, the areas that they are often found, where they congregate, where they gather in huge, huge groups, those areas are being deforested for agriculture, for industry, things like that. And that's just because the human population in that area is also growing. So they do face a risk both here in the United States, where they will spend their summers and they'll raise their young, but also in their place they overwinter. To give you guys an idea of how many of these butterflies end up in their overwintering sites, this is a picture. I don't know if you can tell, but these are trees covered by thousands and thousands and thousands of monarch butterflies. So in their overwintering sites, they will gather in huge, massive numbers. It's amazing. You can actually see the orange from aerial photo shots taken by planes. So if you can imagine, if you have this many butterflies traveling to the same spot every year, but those spots are getting smaller and smaller, you're going to run out of space for these butterflies. So it's really important that we work together to protect them here in the United States, but also in their migratory areas in Mexico. So one of the things that we do here at the zoo, and you actually can get involved in doing if you're interested, is something called Monarch Watch. So every summer, the end of summer, beginning of fall, we start to raise monarch caterpillars, and we try to get them as best we can to adult stage. So these 3 butterflies emerged on Monday and Tuesday, and we've got some flowers in there for them to eat. But as you can see, they're very excited, they're very active. And once we get the caterpillars raised and adults hatched out and transformed, we tag them. Now, how do you tag a monarch butterfly? You're probably very curious as to what that would look like because they are so small. Well, we actually use a very small sticker. So Monarch Watch is an organization that has been around since 1992, and if you go to their website, you can actually get more information on how you can do this at home. So we register with Monarch Watch, and they send us these little tiny stickers. So you can see they're pretty tiny compared to my nail, and each of these stickers has a number and some letter combinations, and then the Monarch Watch information. So what we're going to do today as a demo, we're going to take these stickers, one of these stickers, and we're going to put it on our little butterfly's wing. Now these stickers are specially designed to not weigh a whole lot and to not take up a lot of space because we don't want to damage the butterfly's wing. So we'll use that sticker on the wing. This butterfly will hopefully make it all the way to Mexico, and then if it gets to Mexico, spends the winter there, and dies off or ends up somewhere else, there are volunteers through Monarch Watch and other organizations that will look at that sticker on that butterfly and record it, and we can actually send in our recorded information to say, hey, this butterfly that you found in Mexico or somewhere along the way came from Norristown, Pennsylvania. And that helps Monarch Watch and scientists and other organizations study their populations to see what has happened and what is happening with them. Unfortunately, this last winter was very hard on them, so we're really, really hopeful that this year will be good and these guys will make it to Mexico and have a successful winter time there. So I'm going to do my best to get one of our friends out here. I believe we have 2 males and a female. As they're opening their wings, you might be able to see the males have a little dot on each of their hind wings, kind of on that last inner circle, inner line. So I'm going to, the last thing I have to fill out on our sheet is whether it's a male or a female, but I'm going to wait to do that until I decide who is going to come with us today. I'm going to get our sticker prepped here. This is often a more than 2-hand job. Okay, so when we're handling butterflies, remember those wings are covered in those tiny scales. We want to be very gentle. So I think I might actually go for our more calm friend down here. Actually, we'll go for the spicy one. He looks ready to go. All right, so I'm going to very carefully collect our butterfly. When you're handling butterflies, you want to make sure that you're very gentle with the wings, and you want to make sure you kind of keep the wings closed together. So we're just going to gently have him go like that. There you go, buddy. And we're going to hold those wings right at the top. That kind of helps them to calm down, and it prevents their wings from breaking. And if you can see this little mitten-shaped, can I have my fingers back? Mitten-shaped cell, so it almost looks like a little mitten. That's where we're going to stick our little sticker. So I'm going to one-handed do this here. We're going to stick that on there. And then we're going to hold it and kind of push a little bit. Make sure it sticks on there. Press again. So remember, this sticker does not weigh a whole lot. That way we can not interfere with the travel. So we're going to go ahead and let our little friend outside. If you guys want to follow us. Okay. All right. So we're going to come out here to our sensory garden and find some nice flowers for our friends to go onto. So that tag is on there. We recorded the number. It's ACAJ350. And this one's a male. Whoop! And there he goes. Bye, buddy. Sometimes they need a little time to rest. Other times they just take on off. He is ready to go. All right, guys, so we'll head back inside and I'll see if we have any questions, and you guys can check out our other caterpillars and adults again. Going back in my classroom here. Okay. So don't worry, these other adult butterflies, they will be released this weekend. We actually have a special family program where we will be tagging them as well. So if you guys want to get a close-up look here, let's see if we've got any fun questions for today. Okay, let's see. Is there a way to tell male versus female? Nicole wanted to know. Great. So as I was kind of mentioning, they do have a little dot on the bottom of their wing. So let me pull our little, our no longer with us butterfly aside here so you can kind of see. So they have a forewing and a hind wing. The hind wing is this bottom one. So on the males, they're going to have a little dot right about there. And it's just a little, kind of like a little gland. So they have one on each side. This one would be a female then, because it does not have that little dot. So that's the best way to tell them apart. Other than that, there's not really any good way to tell. Great question. Let's see. Do the males have more dots? So as far as on the end of the wing, the white and the black part, I do not believe they have any more or less than the females. The main way to tell the difference is that little spot on that hind wing. All right, so someone would like to know, do different butterflies get tagged aside from monarchs? That's a great question. So as far as I know, this is the only butterfly tagging program that's going on, at least here in North America. And that's because monarch butterflies are the only ones who do that massive migration. So there aren't any other butterfly species that do that big of a migration here. Now, there are lots of other species that need help though and are being studied. So throughout the United States and across the world, butterfly populations are at risk, not only because of habitat loss like we were talking about with monarchs, but pesticides are a really big threat to these guys. Unfortunately, we want to keep certain pests out of our gardens, and the products that we use sometimes have really harmful effects on butterflies and bees. And we're just now kind of learning more about these problems. So if you would like to create a habitat for monarchs in your backyard, if you have space, even a small amount of space for some kind of milkweed, you can easily plant it and it generally will take off. This time of year you can get seeds to plant for the spring. You can also plant other types of flowering plants, native flowers, things like goldenrod, aster, even things that are not native like lantana. That's the plant we just put our friend out on there. That's a really good nectar plant for butterflies. So if you're trying to attract monarchs to your garden, you want to have both the host plant, the plant for the caterpillars, but also some food for those adults to attract them in the first place. But if you're going to create this kind of space, you want to make sure you buy plants from nurseries that either do not use pesticides or have very limited use and kind of focus on a more organic approach. Because even if they're not spraying, many plants can have pesticides inside of them that do help with keeping other bugs off of them, but unfortunately can be harmful to butterflies as well. So that's important to always be careful when you are planting for butterflies, especially milkweeds. All right, let's see if anybody else has any other questions. Let's see. Got some great caterpillar action today. They are very, very hungry. Remember, they got to grow about 2,000 times their body size. All right. Well, that looks like all the questions we have for now. If you guys have any others that you think of as we're going, or anything else you'd like to know about the Monarchs, the Monarch Watch program, or what you can do to get involved, please feel free to put them in the comments and I'll jump online later. And hopefully you guys enjoyed meeting some of our little different animal friends. These guys aren't permanent residents at the zoo. Again, they'll be headed out, hopefully migrating. So if you are visiting the zoo and you guys happen to see a monarch with a little sticker on it, now you know why. All right, guys, have a great rest of your day and make sure you tune in next Tuesday.